To the community safety meeting of Tuesday, November the 9th. Additions to the agenda. I know there are a couple. Councillor McNulty.
I have two. One of them is to look at illegal ride hailing, and the other I'd like to add is with regard to a letter I think all of us received for the 1-800 suicide mental health line, a status update or what we should be doing with it from the BC crisis line.
So 7A will be illegal ride hailing, 7B the suicide hotline status. Any other items to add to the agenda? See none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
Moved.
Second.
Moved, seconded, thank you. I'll call the question, all those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Wolf? Councillor Wolf, you can't hear us?
Can't hear him. He can't hear us.
I think all our speakers,
Mute.
all our speakers are.
It's Councillor Wolf. I haven't heard any audio yet from anyone.
We can hear
I can hear
you.
you.
We can hear you.
Okay.
It appears that there's no audio coming from council's chambers. I believe you can hear me, Councillor Wolf.
Yes, I can hear you, Grant. Thanks.
Okay, just hang tight
The
for a
host
minute.
would like you to unmute your microphone. You can press *6.
And Michael and I can have a conversation. We
You
just
are
can't talk to
unmuted.
whoever's over there.
Well, we're off
There
to
you
a
go.
good start today. I think it's a full moon.
I think all our speakers are on too.
Can you hear us
It's
now?
working now.
Is that
Yeah,
good?
it's working now.
All right. So there are two additions to the agenda. 7A will be illegal ride hailing. 7B will be the suicide hotline status. It was moved and seconded to amend the agenda. I was just about to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. The minutes of the Community Safety Committee held on July 13th and October 13th are here for review. Were there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Be adopted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. The next committee meeting will be December the 7th, 4 p.m. in council chambers. We'll go right to item number 2, Community Bylaws, Parking Enforcement, and Animal Services Monthly Activity Report, September 2021. Ms. Lloyd, anything to add to your report?
Nothing to add. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from committee? Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I was just wondering about the animal shelter. I drove by and saw the construction going on. How is that coming along?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, it's coming along very nicely. I did a walkthrough of the shelter a couple of weeks ago, and it's going to be a shelter we can all be proud of. We're still on target to open late January, early February.
Wow, that's fast. Thank you.
So I hope at that
You're welcome.
time that council will have the opportunity to go through the new and improved building when it, perhaps just before opening again to the public.
Absolutely.
All right. Are there any other questions from this report? See none?
Move receipt for information.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Item number 3, Property Use Monthly Activity Report, September 2021. Mr. Corrado, good afternoon. Anything to add to your report?
Good afternoon. To the chair, good afternoon. I have nothing further to add, and I'm open to questions.
All right. Are there any questions from committee? Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, through the chair. Just on page 26 for the workload regarding soil and the soil report, just looking at those numbers, I just wanted to hear a comment about the workload for that individual. It seems like a significant workload. I'm not sure of the depth of reporting that has to be done in relation to that, but the calls themselves seem to be substantial. So could you comment on that in terms of, is that person kind of near capacity, or is there, how is that going?
To the chair, to Councillor Hobbs, the workload is consistent with prior years. We are seeing an uptick and sometimes in the complexity of it, and we are also working through the possibility of additional support in the form of staffing as well.
Sure, because just to follow up, the reporting is a big part of it, because you can have very simple reports, and then, as we all know, the complexity of reports has done nothing but get more so as time goes by with regards to everything that has any quasi-legal kind of status. And then just the last question on that was, are most of the calls self-generated or by complaint? What's the kind of combination of those?
Through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, the majority of calls are by complaint. And then with complex calls, they require follow-up inspection. So there will also be inspection counts can pick up files that were opened in prior months as well. So the average month activity for inspections is about 55 per month, and many of those are continual files that have been opened in prior months.
Right, well, thanks. Yeah, so there's that cumulative effect as well. Thank you.
So it would come through the budget process if you were looking at an increase in personnel. Is that correct?
Through the chair to the chair, there was a prior report brought forward to council that looked at funding a temporary position, and we are looking at that staffing action now.
All right, that's good. That's correct. I remember that now. Thanks very much. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, just a procedural question. On our page 27, we're talking about the ALC not making a decision on a property on number 6 Road. Soil and soil deposit is under our jurisdiction, is it not?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, there are instances when you have a notice of intent for farm use exclusively. That is under the jurisdiction of the ALC. All other instances of non-farm use and instances of farm use that don't require an NOI, those are under the jurisdiction of council.
Okay, so non-farm use are ours. I'm following Councillor Hobbs. Officer, and God bless him, her, currently addressing 35 properties that are in non-compliance. I guess these are ones that have applied for. Do we have a list of those? And if they're not in non-compliant, 2 files are with legal counsel. You know, it appears to me, is it mine? I'm sorry. It appears to me, and I'm thinking that in a way we may be out of control in terms of 35 is a lot of properties, and I'm not saying anybody's not working on them full time, but I'm trying to see the distinction between ALC, and we've done a lot of work for the ALC, which we shouldn't have had to, and our own. So I'm just wondering to get a handle on, it appears over the months that none of these files are going down in number, and maybe we have to look at our process and procedures and what we require before somebody starts doing some filling. I thought at one time we had the Kavanaugh report and it was all good and everything works out well, and those people have followed that seem to be in compliance and everything is honky-dory. And then I look at these, so I'm not really looking for a question, I'm sort of pointing out an inherent issue, and obviously, as Mr. Coronado said, we're looking for another half staff. Maybe we're looking for a whole staff member, given the magnitude of the numbers that we have. I don't know if you want to make a comment on that or not, or maybe I'm just...
Anything to add to that, Mr. Corrado?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, a lot of the files that remain in compliance may have dated back to prior months and years because of the complexity of these files. To bring them into compliance requires several QPs or qualified professionals to sign off. So in a sense, they're in varying degrees of moving towards compliance, some not, some close to that. So that's why that cumulative effect looks that way in terms of reporting.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you.
Any other questions from committee? Seeing none, there is a recommendation in our package.
Recommendation be received for
Second.
information.
Moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Item number 4, Richmond Fire Rescue Monthly Activity Report, September 2021. Now, is Chief Wilkinson here? Or, oh, it's Mr. Wishlove. Good afternoon. Anything to add to your report?
I've got nothing further to add, thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Questions from committee. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Well, thank you for the report, thorough as always. I was curious, though, we receive a crime prevention quarterly newspaper from the Rcmp, and it goes out to the community. Does the fire department do anything like that?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, currently we aren't producing any materials similar to that to the community, but I can certainly take it under advisement and speak with the GM and the fire chief on his return.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Wishlaw. That would be great, because it seems to me there's a lot of people who wonder about things like, fire alarms and, whether it should be monitored or not, or they wonder about, smoke detectors. And so I think it'd be nice, especially, in the senior centers and community centers, to have something that people could take home. Like, what number do you call for a non-emergency? Just those kinds of things, so.
I would add that the fire department is doing a really good job on social media. You do come out with a monthly rolling report about how many calls you've had for fire, for medical, and so I think there already is components out there in the public realm. I don't think it would be too much of a stretch to perhaps print it.
Yeah.
Councillor McNulty.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Councillor Day.
Yeah,
Councillor
thank you very
McNulty.
much. A good report, and appreciate it. It's begged a question here on page 31. It says the average time on a scene for fire crews was 33 minutes, which was higher than the 30 minutes recorded in 2020. I guess my question is, and as we drive by, and I'm very pleased that you are on the scene, and especially in terms of motor vehicle, between you and the RCMP to be there and to stabilize the situation. Are we still getting sort of first-hand responses passed on down from BC Ambulance to us, especially in terms of motor vehicle?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, yes, we are. If those motor vehicle incidents hit the bar that there is a potential injury or potential need to extricate a patient or stabilize the scene, we're notified at the same time as the BC Ambulance crews are.
It might be worthwhile following on in a newsletter or whatever, I think it's an idea, is to record the responses that you've gone to in motor vehicle accidents. For example, the young fellow, for example, was just hit out here on, I believe, a Moffat or Mineral Boulevard with somebody coming in, and you were on the spot right away. And in terms of others, it just might be something that we should be aware of where these occur. And I'm not sure if they're recorded elsewhere, that you come on. I think it behooves us well to on it, and then we can say, well, be careful at X, Y, and Z corner, et cetera, et cetera. But I do thank the men and women of all our first responders for being on there. Nothing is more traumatic to people that when they're in a motor vehicle accident and they're stunned and they're standing up and they're not sure what hit them or what they hit. And I think it's great that our people are on the scene. So kudos all around, but I would pass that through the chair that maybe we should be recording those and document them and have them as part of the report. I know you put them in the map, but the map is sort of different if Granville and Two Road, boom, we know exactly where that is. Okay, you put it on the map, you kind of see it, and I'm not asking you to do extra work, but it's a little more documented. Anyhow, good report. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Through the chair, just a short question. In the report, it mentions as a category, and it has it in its few tables as specialized transport. If you could just speak to what does that refer to again? It's as of September, it's above the 5-year rolling average. So if you could just speak, is there a reason why Richmond Fire have had to step up in this avenue? Thanks.
Thank you. Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, specialized transportation typically involves calls that are outside of the normal motor vehicle incident and the aircraft. So specialized transport would be like an incident with a train or potentially a collision between a large vehicle and either something on a railroad track or a motorcycle. It's more of a unique call for service.
Any other questions for committee? Seeing none, there is a recommendation in our package. It's been moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. And the fire chief briefing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have nothing further to add on the verbal briefing.
Councillor Day, do you have a question for the fire chief?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. I was wondering if you could update us on how the COVID vaccines are coming with all the people who work for the Richmond Fire Department.
Through the chair to Councillor Day, I don't have those numbers quite in front of me, but speaking with the human resources folks that are managing the collection of that information, it's moving along as per the policy that was released.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you very much.
Councillor McNulty.
Just a quick question with regard to any incidents of fireworks on Halloween. It seems to be a fair bit out, even though we do not have the sale of fireworks. Just any serious incidences or complaints?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, being a Steveston resident, I heard a lot of that fireworks myself over Halloween night. But as far as our calls for service, we didn't respond to anything that was reportable.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Well, that's good news.
Good stuff.
Thanks very much. Any other questions for the chief? All right, thank you very much. Item number 6, RCMP Monthly Activity Report, September 2021. Good afternoon. Chief Superintendent, anything to add to your report or highlight?
Yes, through the chair, September was a good month for property crime. Saw a reduction in most categories. And also we've been able to hold the line with respect to mental health calls for service, having a reduction year to date of minus 19%. So that's been very positive.
Great.
All right. Any questions? Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. Good to see you. Great report. I was just curious on CS 45. It states that all 3 community police stations remain closed. Is it possible to open them with limited access?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Day, is that we're currently in discussions about our current posture with respect to COVID. And the only reason why they're closed is because of the pandemic. And so we're just looking at ways that we can open up the CPOs. So as soon as we have our numbers and attestations in place, I think we'll be in a better position to consider reopening.
Does it in anywhere bear, like how is the vaccination going with the RCMP staff? Does that have any bearing on it?
Yes, so we're just getting our house in order with respect to the attestations. And currently we have 2 officers out of the 288 that have indicated that they will not be getting the vaccine. So they're going to be going on leave without pay currently, and then the remaining of the officers have been vaccinated. So, and then we're just waiting for the City of Richmond posture as well with respect to their employees. And then once we have that all in place, then we'll be looking at discussions about reopening.
Well, thank you. That's impressive numbers. Thank you.
Would you need to have a work plan approved by the provincial health officer to open those facilities, or is it more the city being in alignment?
Thank you. Through the chair, is that I don't believe we need to go through the Provincial Health Authority to reopen our community police office. It's going to be a discussion, I think, between the City of Richmond and the Rcmp.
All right, thank you. Councillor Hobbs.
Thank you, and through the chair. Good afternoon. Thanks for the report, and I'm just curious on a couple of the stats. I see they're actually relatively pretty good. But when it comes to things like assaults, serious assaults and assault with a weapon, is there any, I know there was no pattern and no trend, but is it a trend of like people knowing people, or is it a stranger attack? Is there anything that you can comment on that way? I mean, you know what I mean about when you have parties or something and people get into altercations versus strangers more randomly attacking or targeting people on the street. Do you have any comment on that?
Yes, through the chair, Councillor Hobbs, is that most of the assaults that are taking place, a lot of them are domestic violence associated assaults, and we don't have many random assaults. But most of the victims most of the subjects of the complaints are known to the victims, and there has been no trend in relation to one particular individual assaulting a number of others. So it has been just relationships most of the time.
Sure, thanks. I appreciate that. And of course, they're all serious assaults. But and just moving on to sex offenses, again, I mean, you might be able to read into it because you didn't comment on it, but just the level within the categories we have, 1, 2, 3 with sex assaults. I'm sure if there was something serious, you would have mentioned it. But is there anything to these, or does the same type of analysis apply? They're all serious, but people who know one another, or nothing with a stranger, and nothing too serious in terms of the level of assault, sexual assault, because it's a very broad category when you just use the one term.
Yes, thanks, Councillor Hobbs, to the chair. We have looked at ways to categorize, but we haven't found a foolproof way of categorizing the different types of sex offenses. What I can say is that there is no risk to public safety in relation to any of these offenses. The sex assaults, a number of them are historical, and a number of them are known. The subject is known to the victim that are between two people in relationships, and then the remainder of the offenses are related to possession of child pornography, which we come across quite often at the airport when CBSA does a screening and actually looks through people's devices, and actually when they notice that there is child pornography on the phone or device, they will notify the Rcmp, and we do go there and take the file over. So those are some of the, and then we also have occasionally indecent acts of exposure in public. So those are pretty much the types of offenses that we're investigating.
Sure, and I appreciate that, and I know if there was any threat to public safety, you'd be all over it publicly. But that is an interesting breakdown, because when you just hear sexual assaults, people have their own impression of what that is, and in fact, you just broke it down very nicely. And so if there was some way to do that in a public forum, that would probably be helpful. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you. Through the chair, just a couple quick questions related to the road safety unit component of the report. I know there's other ways that people kill each other, but vehicles is definitely evident in the last few weeks on our streets. And looking in this report is just a table of the last 3 months, so I don't have the luxury to compare it to last year's data. It's on page 47, CS 47, or page 8 of the report. And I'm not sure if you can speak to anything that does jump out. I know lots of the comments I've heard from the public in the last few weeks was, forget about all these other priorities. The city needs to make our roads safer so people aren't dying day after day in these very visual collisions and intersections with lots of video cameras. So I don't know if you could speak to that, and then I have a follow-up question. Thanks.
Sure. Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, thank you for your question, and it is a concern with relation to road safety. We have experienced 2 fatals over the past couple of weeks. What I can say is that there is substantial road safety enforcement in Richmond, and I'm just looking at the metrics in front of me right now. From the entire Lower Mainland, Richmond scores number 1 when it comes to speed enforcement. For total tickets written, violation tickets, Richmond scores number 1 as well. Our road safety unit is topping the charts, also with respect to electronic devices as well, substantially. In fact, Richmond road safety unit doubles the closest detachment, doubles it for their statistics. What I will also add is that the integrated road safety unit, which is independent of the Richmond RCMP, also provides enforcement in Richmond. To date, they have written 1,148 tickets in Richmond, and it's at no cost to Richmond as well. So those are the statistics for road safety in Richmond. Also, we've been working with ICBC to provide more speeder reader boards. You might have noticed that some of them on Stevenson Highway and 5 Road and so forth. We're looking at the high crash areas and continuing to provide more speeder reader boards to hopefully slow down the speeders. And we have had some results from River Road a few years ago. We did place speeder reader boards on River Road, and we did look at the metrics, and it did actually reduce speeds along River Roads. So we felt that would be an effective measure to also put them on the high-speed locations in Richmond. So we've been working also with ICBC on education, putting out more social media, and we're also going to be working with ICBC on other ways that we can reduce speeds along the Richmond roads.
Thank you. Through the chair to Superintendent, that's a great addition to the report. I'm not sure if it could be a regular component of your report, or we could see the integrated road unit statistics maybe on a quarterly or something like that might be a value. I'm not sure who would reach out to get that. But I think that's a valuable message that many drivers, pedestrians, cyclists want to hear about Richmond being that number 1 caliber as you laid out. So thanks for that. And I think I passed 3 speed boards each day on my loop to school and back. And I hope I'm bringing that average down that you refer to there. The last question I had, slightly related, Jake breaks. I'm still hearing a number of complaints from the public on, I thought the city had bylaws to prevent Jake break usage by the large trucks. And I was just sitting in my dentist chair the other day, and I heard it rumbling down the road. I come home, I hear it again. My parents, I just hear it in all corners of Richmond still. And would it fit in this table under the other category? I know at the bottom it says other refers to not failing to stay at the scene of an accident. But is there a metric to capture that? And maybe that's what's needed first, and then we'll actually go out and enforce that. I'm just trying to, I guess I'm awaiting the first use of the bylaw that we have. Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Liu?
Thank you, through the chair, is Superintendent Ng. Thank you for this report. As we saw in the first report, you wouldn't have necessarily noticed this, but in our first bylaw report, there were 80 bylaw tickets handed out around the schools for essentially parking and those kind of automobile-related things. And so this Think of Me campaign that you guys ran in September, it seems that there was nearly 2,000 vehicles going through this program amongst the different schools in Central Richmond, McNeely, and Cook, it seems. Now, it seems that a number of information letters were mailed to vehicle owners, so those are essentially warnings, I'm guessing. So would there be any follow-up with actual police officers handing out tickets in those areas sort of in the next month to see if people actually learned anything from those warnings, or to maybe follow it up with the heavier hand?
Yes, thanks. Through the chair, Councillor Liu. We are monitoring the high-speed areas, especially school zones. and those that will have the greatest numbers will receive the attention of our road safety unit, which will be out there. In addition to enforcement, we're also having our community engagement team. They're also out there as well during school times to also monitor the speed flow as well. So not just volunteers, but also our community engagement officers are also out there as well. But I'll make sure that we look at ways that we can increase enforcement in the school zones.
Thank you. Especially in the ones that you've, it seems that some of them have maybe some higher issues, higher rates of issues in their areas.
Thank you, Councillor Lee.
All right, I don't see any other questions from
The report we
committee.
received for information.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. The RCMP OIC briefing. Anything to share with us?
Yes, through the chair is that we have our annual toy drive coming up on November the 20th at 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Lansdowne Center, right next to the Canada line. Please come out and support our young people and families by donating toys to our Christmas fund. And that's all I got for you. Thank you.
Great.
Great. Well, thanks for that, and I'm sure we will see you out there. All right. Now, we do have 7A, illegal ride hailing. Councillor McNulty, you added this to the agenda.
Yes, thanks, Chairperson. I added it also because, as you remember at Public Works a while back, they were asked that it be put on the agenda of the community safety. And I guess I have some questions, if I can, and I also asked Mr. Vandal Hamilton to come up because I'd like to ask him some questions as a delegation. But I guess my question here is given, I also see that one-day crackdown on illegal ride-hailing, Richmond next, 7,500 in fines. I didn't bring it up for that, but I'm more concerned about people getting in to the unlicensed car, especially what hit me hard was the young women coming, wanting to come to school here, and young people, as a matter of fact, not knowing where they're going in a strange country and being driven to various locations, etc., and some of the stats that came as a result of it. And I know we have done a couple of things, like contacted the Passenger Transportation Board with concerns, but I'd like to see that correspondence. I don't recall seeing it, if we've done that. And also the Council School Board Liaison will get a report from our two council members on and what the reaction of the school board was. So I think it's critical from a public safety point of view. And I'd like to ask the OIC, obviously, if we did a crackdown and we find people, what, in your mind, can we further do that we're not already doing? And we can assure the public that we are doing the right thing. And if they should make a choice to go a different route in terms of transportation, obviously it's in a way their choice, and we've done all we can. So are we doing everything that we could? To Will?
Yep.
To Will,
Superintendent?
Are we doing everything you think we could, or could we do more?
Can't hear you.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor McNulty. We're currently also providing. Hello?
Yeah,
Yep.
there we are.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, through the chair to Councillor McNulty. We're currently providing education and awareness, not just to the people that are at schools, but the people who are actually utilizing this type of transportation. And we're also going to be doing enforcement as well. And hopefully in time, we'll start to see people be more aware that some of these drivers are not licensed. And they don't go receive a criminal record check. And that might then steer them in the right direction. We're still in the preliminary stages of doing this, but I'm hoping that in time we'll start to see a reduction, and the awareness will increase as well amongst our community.
Have there been other issues reported to the RCMP or anybody as a result of somebody partaking in this kind of transportation that we're aware of? Like
The only incident I
assaults
can,
or that kind of thing?
the only incident that I can recall happened a couple of years ago, where a young person decided to take their own life on the Knight Street Bridge. But other than that, no.
Okay, all right. I don't know whether other councillor wants to ask any question, but I'd like to ask Mr. Vandenham on some pointed questions, if I may.
Yeah, I'll invite him in a minute. I have Councillor Hobbs, is your question for the superintendent, chief superintendent? Yes, all right,
it is.
go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, this is I think, a huge topic, actually, because I think a lot of the incidents that might happen are probably unreported for all kinds of reasons: language issues, cultural issues, the nature of that underground economy. So I'm also fairly certain that a lot of the people in that business or in that line of undocumented work don't necessarily live in Richmond. They could be from all over the Lower Mainland. So the question is this something that's come up with Lower Mainland or RCMP, or has it come up with the BC Chiefs or the Traffic Safety Committee? Because, you know, the response, whatever it may be, the more coordinated and integrated it could be, probably the greater the impact in terms of enforcement and police action. And anyway, that's a question.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Hobbs, is the legal rideshare hasn't been a hot topic at the BC Chiefs of Police. However, that is something that I can definitely bring up as the executive member of the BC Chiefs.
Excellent.
And do a check with other chiefs of police to see if it's something that's actually come up. And then I guess we can collaborate and look for ways that we can provide more education awareness on it, for sure, and take more action and collaborative efforts at targeting the illegal ride hailing.
Sure. I think that's great because, you know, people who take different forms of transportation, ride hailing, whatever it is, as you know, can be in very vulnerable states due to all kinds of circumstances. So I think it's really great that you can follow up on that. So thank you.
Before I invite Martin Vandenham, I just want to ask Councillor Liu, has this come to Council School Board Liaison already, or is it on an upcoming agenda?
It's on an upcoming, we don't have another meeting till December.
Oh, so December, so we'll hear more about it in December.
good job.
All right. Mr. Martin Vandenhemmel, please come forward. Thank you for being here today, and we'll just set you up here with a laptop. So Councillor McNulty, you have a question of the delegate?
And I thank you for bringing it up to Public Works, and obviously it's an issue that we need to deal with. I guess my question to you as from your company, I guess, if I may use that term, point of view, what have you specifically done to highlight this issue, let's say with the Transportation Board or whatever? What has your company done on that? And have you mentioned it, let's say to the provincial government or whatever?
Yeah, so through the chair, Councillor McNulty, we have been working with the Passenger Transportation Board and branch since the day we unplugged our app, actually before that, since we applied for a license. We anticipated this is what would happen, that these companies that were, so pre-September 16th, 2019, Kabu had about 95% of the market. We were doing about 3,000 trips a day. That demand didn't disappear overnight, but our services did. And so those 3,000 trips a day on a Monday morning, those 3,000 trips suddenly went somewhere, and we know where it went. It went to those other the other companies that had the 5% of the market. So overnight, they absorbed all of those trips, and we knew that would put children in harm's way. and we know that these are the type of incidents that would not be brought to the attention of the general public or the police simply because of the vulnerable nature of the people that are here. These are international students that are studying here, learning a new culture in a new country, away from mom and dad. In many cases, they don't know any better. And so getting the message out to them is difficult as it is, because you can't print it in the local newspaper because they're not necessarily going to read the local newspaper. How do you get the message to the parents? Parents are back in China in most cases. And so that's why I think it would behoove council to work so closely with the district, because the district has information about the parents that have signed their children up to attend school here. So we knew the extent of the problem because now that in-person learning has resumed, and we know how many trips we're doing every day, we know how many trips the black market is doing every day. And we think it's in the range of about 2,000 trips a day. We are aware of one incident that was reported to Vancouver Police. We reported it. It happened in South Vancouver last summer of 2020. It was a relatively minor car accident involving a driver with either an L or an N on the vehicle, and there was a young female passenger, early 20s. As soon as the accident happened, the driver screamed at the passenger to get out of the car, which she did. She was shaken up, got out of the car. The reason we know about it is because she then called one of our vehicles, got into one of our vehicles, told our driver what happened, and was then driven to a Richmond location on Alexandra Road. I think it was like a karaoke bar or something like that. And then we know from looking at our data that about 4 hours later, she went to the hospital at Royal Columbian Hospital in New West. We don't think that was a coincidence. We think that the accident was enough that maybe she had soft tissue damage, whiplash or something like that, and then 4 hours later she felt the symptoms and then went. So the fear that we have is the provincial economy and Canadian economy relies a lot on international students. There's a lot of money that's brought in. If there's a single incident that involves an elementary school age kid or a high school kid, that could forever tarnish the reputation of Canada, BC, as an international safe haven to send your children for higher education. It's a very dangerous game to play, and that's why we've been putting so much pressure on the board, the branch, and we've been trying to send this message out. Now, the question might come, why now? Why didn't you have this meeting with us a year ago? Well, a year ago, we were still reeling from COVID. We didn't really know how much our business was down as a result of COVID or other factors. Well, now that vaccinations are here and the economy is opening again and in-person classes are resuming, we know where our business should be and we know where it's at. And we hear from our own drivers. So we have situations where we have our own Class 4 drivers. So drivers that have spent thousands of dollars to upgrade from Class 5 to Class 1, 2, or Class 4 to meet provincial standards. Some of them are actually working for the black market. The reason they're doing that is because the amount of work that they get through Kaboo is only a fraction of what it was previously. So they're working for the black market because the demand is so high. The payments are in cash. And if the payments are in cash, that means you don't have to pay taxes on it. Now, they respect the fact that they're not covered by commercial insurance and that they run the risk of being pulled over by a police officer. But we are also aware of a case where the PTB caught somebody, fined them between $1,000 and $2,000. They then appealed to the court, so they contested it. It got to court last August, so 2.5 months ago. And the PTB withdrew the complaint. So not only did they not have to pay that fine, they then bragged to all of their people, the people in their circle. So the drivers groups have a circle where they share information, and they said, take a look at this. I got fined, brothers, I got fined this a year ago, like everybody said I should. I appealed it, I went to court, and they withdrew the complaint, and so I didn't even have to pay. So it further emboldened these Class 5 drivers to do what they're doing. Because, just to give you an idea, the illegal black market right now, roughly, is worth about $12–13 million a year here in the Lower Mainland. because we know where we were when we were doing 3,000 trips a day. We know the economic footprint. So we know with them doing roughly 2,000 trips a day, how much that's worth. And that's roughly $12, $13 million a year. So that's a lot of financial incentives for these Class 5 drivers to do the work. And if they do get caught and get fined $1,000, well, if they're making $85,000 a year, $1,000 is the cost of doing business. It's the risk you run. But should we, what should we should be looking at, obviously, the kids that are involved, because the parents are relying on us to keep an eye on them.
Right, Councillor McNulty, do you have any other questions?
I think just one question. How many companies are the people out there as individuals that your people have observed, or are they actually groups of a company, 10 or 12 drivers banded together?
So we're talking about, we estimate there are every day there are hundreds of these Class 4 drivers that are working in the Lower Mainland. And what these companies are doing, I won't name the companies, but what these companies are doing is they attempt to legitimize themselves by working with legitimate companies. So specifically, and I'm not going to name them, Asian food delivery companies. The reason these legitimate companies are partnering with them is because once you get a kid into your ecosystem, each kid is worth literally, if not tens of thousands of dollars every year for each kid. So, if I may, through the chair, we know of what happened at the Vancouver International Airport, where children were essentially accosted as they were getting off the planes and going into the international area, and told by these illegal ride-hailing companies and the legal companies that they're partnering with, watch out for the police, watch out for those enforcement officers, just kind of hide over here until those guys move away, those guys in uniform, just wait till they're over there, and then we'll bring you to the free trip that we're providing you in the car that's at the curb over there. So it's worth so much money that they're willing to do this in such a brazen fashion.
Okay, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Does anybody else have questions right now from Mr. Vanden Hemmel? Okay.
Okay,
Thank you very much. And I know that staff do have an update for us.
Got one.
And that's going to come under manager's report.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 7B, the suicide hotline status report. Councillor McNulty?
Yeah, thank you. I believe we all received this letter with regard to the 1-800-SUICIDE 310-6780 mental health line, and the stress line was to be in jeopardy. And my only comment here is, because I know Councillor Liu brought something forward before with another line, that maybe we should just write a letter in support of any line that's available to the general public with regard to suicide. As a clinical counselor, I can attest any help out there, no matter what line it is, with somebody at the other end is of value to people. And I'm just asking that we write a letter accordingly to the Crisis Center of BC supporting the maintenance of the 1-800-SUICIDE line.
So refer to staff.
Refer to staff to write the appropriate correspondence.
Okay, is there a seconder for that?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, Councillor Day?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious, I did receive an email, which I can look for here, from staff about this already, and they were going to be meeting with the local, I think it's Shimo crisis line. So maybe we should, before we send a letter, just find out where staff's at, because it might already be in the works.
Is there anyone on staff who can comment on this?
Through the chair, I know that this has been referred to Kim Somerville from Community Social Development to look into it, because they are the holder of the relationship with a lot of these nonprofit organizations, and to see how the city could be of assistance.
All right. So, but the referral has been made and seconded to write correspondence. So we will get an update, I'm sure, from Ms. Somerville, and if it's appropriate or not to
exactly
make the correspondence and support it.
Perfect.
All right, any other questions? I'll call the question on the referral. All those in favor? Opposed? It is carried. Thank you. Manager's report, Ms. Asham, I believe you do have an update on some of the work that staff have been doing in relation to the issue that Martin van den Hemel and Cabu have brought up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, staff have been in contact with the Passenger Transportation Board, and we are working with them to do some enforcement action. I'm, of course, not at liberty to give you details on the operations at this point in time, but that is in the works. And both the Rcmp and staff will be attending the next school liaison committee to talk about this topic as well.
Great.
Has there been any discussion of a communication plan? Because my guess would be it would have to be in a couple of different languages. So has there been any discussion on that, about how we could reach potential riders?
Yes, and that's part of our discussion with the Transportation Board, because they are the holder of the licensing entity. The only way the city is involved in is if a company chooses to headquarter in the city and we license them through business license that way.
All right, and then so we will have feedback from when this goes to Council Board Liaison in December. So I think that, you know, committee is concerned, obviously, about the safety of citizens, and perhaps you can give us an update in the near future about future actions that are going to be happening. Councillor Au.
Yes, I just want to know, do we know where are those companies running? You know, do they operate in Richmond or in Lower Mainland or even overseas? And do they get a license of some kind?
Through the chair to Councillor Au, if they are licensed, then we would not be running into this issue. So we are really talking about unlicensed company, and so they could be running from anywhere. And again, this is an issue that PDB is really the holder of that information, and we don't have that information. It's not something that is somebody licensed in Richmond doing something illegal. It's an illegal service.
Okay, good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other managers' updates?
Not in open.
All right, thank you. So looking for adjournment. Moved, seconded, we are adjourned.